Hey guys, we're gonna continue our reading journey, and today's story is The Coming Out of Maggie. Interesting. Every Saturday night, the Clover Leaf Social Club gave a hop in the hall of the Give and Take Athletic Association on the east side. In order to attend one of these dances, you must be a member of a Give and Take, or if you belong to the division that starts off with the right foot in waltzing, you must work in Gold's paperbox factory. Still, any Cloverleaf was privileged to escort or be escorted by outsider to a single dance, but mostly each give and take brought the paperbox girl that he affected, and few strangers could boast of having shaken a foot at the regular hops. Maggie Tooley, on account of her dull eyes, broad mouth, and left-handed style of footwork in two-step, went to the dances with Anna McCarthy and her fellow. Anna and Maggie worked side by side in a factory and were the greatest chums ever. So Anna always made Jimmy Burns take her by Maggie's house every Saturday night so that her friend could go to the dance with them. The Give and Take Athletic Association lived up to its name. The half of the association in or Orchard Street was fitted out with mus- muscle making inventions. With the fibers, thus built up the members who warned to engage the police and rival social and athletic organizations in joyous combat. Between these most serious occupations, the Saturday Night Hops with the Paperbox Factory Girls came as a refining influence and as an efficient screen. For sometimes the tip went round, and if you were among to elect, they elected tiptoed up the dark black stairway. You might see as neat as satisfying a little welterweight affair to a finish as ever happened inside the ropes. On Saturdays, Rheingold's paperbox factory closed at 3 p.m. On one such afternoon, Anna and Maggie walked homeward together. At Maggie's door, Anna said as usual, "Be ready at 7 sharp, Mag, and Jimmy and me will come by for you." But what was this? Instead of the customary humble and grateful thanks for non-escorted one, there was to be perceived a high post head, a prideful dim, dumpling, dimpling at the corners of the broad mouth, and almost as sparkly in a dull brown eye. "Thanks, Anna," said Maggie, "but you and Jimmy needn't bother tonight. I've a gentleman friend that's coming round to escort me to the Hope." The comedy Anna pounced upon her friend, shook her, chilled and beseeched, beseeched her. Maggie too to catch a fellow, plain, dear, loyal, unattractive Maggie, so sweet and as a chum, so unsolved for a two-step or a moonlit bench in a little park. How was it? When did it happen? Who was it? You'll see tonight, said Maggie, flushed with the wine of the first grapes she had gathered in Cupid's vineyard. He's well, all right. He's swell, all right. He's 2 inches taller than Jimmy and an up-to-date dresser. I'll introduce him, Anna, just as soon as we get to the hall. Annie and Jimmy were among the first clover leaves to arrive that evening. Anna's eyes were brightly fixed upon the door on the hall to catch the first glimpse of her friend's cage. At 8:30, Miss Tully swept into the hall with her escort. Quickly her triumphant eye discovered her chum under the wing of the faithful Jimmy. "Oh, gee!" cried Anna. "Meg ain't made a hit. Oh, no. Swell fellow. Well, I guess. Well, I guess. Style? Look at them." "Go as far as you like," said Jimmy with a sandpaper in his voice. Come, cop him out if you want him. These new guys always win out of the push. Out, win out with the push. Don't mind me. He don't, he don't squeeze. He doesn't, maybe, no? He does squeeze all the limes, I guess. Huh. Shut up, Jimmy. You know what I mean. I'm glad for Meg. First fellow she ever had. Oh, here they come. Across the floor, Maggie said like a coquettish yacht convoyed by a stately cruiser. And truly, her companion justified the encomiums encomiums and faithful charm. He stood two, he stood 2 inches taller than the average give-or-take athlete. His dark hair curled, his eyes and teeth flashed whenever be best bestowed, his frequent smiles. The young men of the Cloverleaf Club pinned not their faith to the graces of person as much as they did to its prowess, its achievements in hand-to-hand conflicts, and its preservation from the legal dress that constantly minced it. The member of this association who would bind a paper box maiden to his conquering chariot scorned to employ Beer Brummel heirs. They were not considered honorable methods of warfare. The swelling biceps, the coat, straining in at its buttons over the chest, the air of conspicuous conviction of the eminence of the male, and the cosmogony of creation. Even even a calm display of bow legs, as dining, subdining, and 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 chanting agents in the gentle tourneys of Cupid. These were two approved arms and ammunition of Cloverleaf's gallants. They viewed then the genuflections and alert poses of the visitor with their chains at a new angle. A friend of mine, Mr. Terry O'Sullivan, was Maggie's formula of introduction. She led him around the room, presenting him to each new arriving Cloverleaf. Almost was the pretty sure, the almost almost was she pretty now, with the unique luminosity in her eyes that comes to a girl with her first suitor and a kitten with its first mouse. Maggie Too's got a fellow at last, was the word that went around among the paper box girls. Pipe Maggie's floor walker. Thus, they give and takes express their indifferent contempt. Usually, at the weekly hops, Maggie kept a spot on the wall warm with her back. She felt and showed so much gratitude whenever a self-sacrificing partner invited her to dance that his pleasure was cheapened and diminished. diminished. She had even grown used to noticing Anna juggle the re- reluctant, reluctant Jimmy with her elbow as a signal for him to invite her chum to walk over his feet through a two-step. But tonight the pumpkin had turned to a coach and six. At 6 and 6. Terry O'Sullivan was a victorious Prince Charming, and Maggie Tully winched her first butterfly flight. And and though our tropes of fairyland be mixed with those etymology, they shall not spill one drop of ambrosia from the rose crowned melody of Maggie's one perfect night. The girls beside besieged besi- besieged her introductions to her fellow. The clover-leaf young man, after 2 years of blindness, suddenly per- perceived charms to Miss Tully. They flexed their compelling muscles before her and bespoke her for the dance. Thus she scored, but Terry O'Sullivan, the honors, the honors of the evening fell thick at- and fast. He shocked his curls, he shook his curls, he smiled and went easily through the 7 motions of a squaring grace in your own room before an open window 10 minutes each day. He danced like a faun. He introduced manner and style and atmosphere. His words came trippingly upon his tongue, and he waltzed twice in succession with the paper box girl that Dempsey Dorwan brought. Dempsey was a leader of the association. He wore a dress suit and could chin the bar twice with one hand. He was one of the big Mike's O'Sullivan lieutenants, and was never troubled by trouble. No cop dared to arrest him. Whenever he broke a push cart man's head or shot a member of the Hendrik B. Swaney Outing and Literary Association in the kneecap, an officer would drop around and say, "The captain, the cap and D like to see you a few minutes round to the office when you have time, Dempsey, me boy." But there would be sundry gentlemen there with large fob chains and black cigars. And somebody would tell a funny story, and then Dempsey would go back and work half an hour with the 6 pound dumbbells. So doing a tightrope act on a wire stretch across Niagara was a safe terpiscopy trip terpsichorean performance compared with Walden twice with Dempsey Donovan, Pepper Box Carol. At 10 o'clock, the jolly round face of Big Mike O'Sullivan stone shone at the door for 5 minutes upon the scene. He always looked in for 5 minutes, smiled at the girls, and handed out real perfection to the delighted boys. Dempsey Dorwan was his elbow instantly, talking rapidly. Big Mike looked carefully at the dancers, smiled, shook his head, and departed. The music stopped. The dancers scattered to the chairs along the walls. Terry O'Sullivan, with his entrance in bow, relinquished a pretty girl in blue to her partner and started back to find Maggie. Dempsey intercepted him in the middle of the floor. Some fine instinct that Rome must have bequeathed, 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 bequeathed to us caused nearly everyone to turn and look at them. There was a subtle feeling that two gladiators had met in the area. Two or three give and takes with tight coat sleeves drew nearer. One moment, Mr. O'Sullivan, said Dempsey, I hope you're enjoying yourself. Where did you say you lived? The two gladiators were well matched. Dempsey had perhaps 10 pounds of weight to give away. The O'Sullivan had breathed with quickness. Dempsey had a glacial eye and dominating slit of a mouth and indestructible jaw and complexion like a bell's and the coolness of a champion. The visitor showed more fire in his contempt and less control over his conspicuous sneer. They were enemies by the law written with the rocks were molten. They were each too splendid, too mighty, too incomparable to the white preeminence. One only must survive. I live on Grant, said O'Sullivan insolently, and no trouble to find me at home. Where do you live? Dempsey ignored the question. You say your name, O'Sullivan? He went out. Well, Big Mike says he never saw you before. Lots of things he never saw, said the favorite of the Hope. As a rule, went on Dempsey, sorry, huskily sweet O'Sullivans in this district know one another. You escorted one of our lady members here, and we want to chance to make good. If you got a family tree, let's see a few historical Sullivan's buds come out on it. Or do you want us to dig it out of you by the roots? Suppose you mind your own business, suggested O'Sullivan blandly. Dempsey's eyes brightened. He held up an inspired forefinger, and though a brilliant idea had struck him. I've got it now, he said cordially. It was just a little mistake. You ain't no O'Sullivan. You're a ring-tailed monkey. Excuses for not recognizing you at first. O'Sullivan's eyes flashed. He made a quick movement, but Andy Gohan was ready to caught his arm. Dempsey nodded at Andy, and William Mahan, the secretary of the club, and walked rapidly towards the door at the rear of the hall. Two other members of the Give and Take Association softly joined the little group. Terry O'Sullivan was now in the hands of board of rules and social referees. They spoke to him briefly and softly and conducted him out through the same door as the rear. This movement on the part of the Cloverleaf members requires a word of alco, alc, elucidation. Back to the association hall was a smaller room rented by the club. In the room, personal difficulties that arose on the ballroom floor were settled, man to man, with the weapons of nature under the supervision of the board. No lady could say that she had witnessed a fight at a Cloverleaf Hope in several years. Its gentlemen members guaranteed that. So easily and smoothly had Dempsey and the board done their preliminary work that many of the hall had not noticed. The checking of the fascinating O'Sullivan social triumph. Among this was Maggie. She looked about for her escort. Smoke up, said Rose Cassidy. Wasn't you on? Damps Donovan picked a scrap with your lazy boy, and Dave waltzed out to slaughter room with him. How's many how's my hair look done? Up with this way, Meg. Maggie laid a hand on the bosom of her cheesecloth waist. Going to fight with Dempsey, she said breathlessly. They've got to be stopped. Dempsey Donovan can't fight him. Why? He'll kill he'll he'll kill him. Oh, what do you care? Said Rosa. Don't some of them fight every hope? But Maggie was off, darting her zigzag way through the maze of dancers. She burst through the rear door into the dark hall and then threw her solid shoulder against the door of the room of the single combat. It gave way, it gave way, and in the instant that she entered, her eye caught the scene, the board standing about with open watches. Dempsey Donovan in his shirt sleeves, dancing light-footed with the very grace of the modern pugilist within easy reach of his adversary. adversary. Terry O'Sullivan standing with arm folded, a murderous look in his dark eyes, and without slacking the speed of her entrance, she leaped forward with a scream, leaped in time to catch a hand upon the arm of Sullivan's that was suddenly uplifted, and so whisk from it from it the long bright stiletto that he had drawn from his bosom. The knife the knife fell and rang upon the floor. Cold steel drawn in the rooms of the Give and Take Association. Such a thing had never happened before. Every stood motionless for for a minute. Annie Gohan kicked the stiletto with the toe of his shoe curiously, like an antiquarian who has come upon some ancient weapon unknown to his learning. And then O'Sullivan hissed something unintelligible between his teeth. Dempsey and the board, board exchanged looks, and then Dempsey looked at O'Sullivan without anger, as one looks at the stray dog, and nodded his head in the direction of the door. The back stairs, Giuseppe, he said briefly. Somebody'll pitch your head down after you. Maggie walked to the Dempsey Donovan. There was a brilliant spot of red in her cheeks down with the slow tears were running. But she looked him bravely in the eye. I knew it, Dempsey, she said, as her eyes grew dim even in their tears. I knew he was a Guinea. His name his name's Tony Spinelli. I hurried with I hurried in when they told me you and him was scrapping. Them them Guineas always carries knives. But you don't understand, Dempsey. I never had a fellow in my life. I got tired of coming with Anna and Jimmy every night, so I fixed it with him to call himself O'Sullivan and brought him along. I knew there'd be nothing doing for him in if he came as a Dago. I guess I'll resign from the club now. Dempsey turned to any Gauhan, Johan, Johan, Gulshan, Georgian. Check the cheese slicer out of the window, he said, and tell them inside that Mr. O'Sullivan telephone message to go down to Tammany Hall. And then he turned back to Maggie. Say, Meg, he said, I'll see you home. And how about the next Saturday night? Will you come to the hop with me if I call around for you? It was remarkable how quickly Maggie's eyes could change from dew to a shining brown. With you, Dempsey? She stammered. Say, will a duck swim? Will a duck swim? That's a question. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to me, and see you tomorrow.